if that's the guy who's hired now that we're just waiting for the name to be released, I think this would be a serious mistake on the Razorbacks' part. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode on the College Underdogs YouTube channel. I am your host, Trey Smith. We are the show that goes beyond the blue blood. So if you are a fan of a college underdog football team, this is the channel for you. I'm going to ask you right now to just hit like, hit subscribe, turn your notifications on, because this is the channel for you. We might get to 5,000 subscribers off this video. In fact, I think we will at the rate that we're going at. So we're going to hit 5,000, then we're going to hit 10,000, then we're going to hit 100,000 of a underdog army. So I want you to be a part of that. Join the discussion. We have some great conversations that happen on these videos just about the college football landscape and how the underdogs are impacted. And today's show is going to be no different. I'm going to jump into this coaching search with Arkansas. It's sort of a follow-up video to a video I did a couple of weeks ago, especially with the new release. And if you saw Pete Thamel talking about this after the game Saturday, or during the game Saturday, I should say, we're going to get into that. And then also there is a scenario. As much as I've been talking about the AAC being in control for the G6 CFP bid, there is a scenario where the AAC champion could get in as well as JMU. And I'm going to lay out exactly what needs to happen in order for that to happen, because it's not likely, but it's not impossible. And I want to get your thoughts on that as well. And so let's get right to it. So Pete Thamel put out there yesterday that the Razorback coaching search is coming to an end. It's coming to a close. They're wrapping it up. And in fact, all day Sunday, there has been people on Twitter, the Marcelo guy with 24/7 Sports, and different things coming out that Arkansas has their guy. Now, if you'll remember, I don't know if it was last Sunday. Yeah, it would have been last Sunday where we were talking about, or the Sunday before maybe, talking about that I had gotten a text about the Razorbacks making the announcement of their new head coach the week of Mizzou. I felt like if that were to be real, or if that were to be true, there's no way it could be a sitting head coach. And so it seemed like all signs were pointing to Franklin. Well, of course, it obviously wasn't James Franklin. And now they're saying that, 48 hours, it could be done, or it's a done deal and it's going to come out in 48 hours. Who knows? It could come out while I'm recording this video. But the 4 candidates that have been named by Pete Thamel, 3 of the 4 are sitting head coaches. One of them on the cusp of a playoff run. And so I'm going to go back through a couple of these. Well, I'm going to go through all of them, but I say back through because I talked about several of them a couple of weeks ago. But I just really want to emphasize, if you're a Razorback fan watching right now, or if you're an AAC fan of one of these teams thinking about who could potentially lose your coach, let me know your thoughts down in the comments. But also, if you're a Razorback fan, you really need to pay attention here. I'm going to just give you my God-honest thoughts and opinion on this. And you may go, well, why should we listen to you? I'm going to tell you why. First off, I have a vested interest in the Razorback program. Okay, I am an Arkansas Razorback, and personally, I want to see them get this hire right. Secondly, I spent a significant amount of time almost exclusively covering the AAC as a credentialed media member. Now, since this channel has expanded, but if you followed this channel for a period of time, like several years, you know that 2 of the pillars of this channel are the Razorbacks and the AAC. Okay, now, the foundation of the channel now really is just the underdogs of the entire landscape. But I mean, those are 2 things that I would like to think I've got a pretty extensive knowledge of and familiarity with. 3 of the 4 coaches that were named by Pete Thamel, I've worked with at media days. I've talked to personally, asked questions, the whole 9, and I've followed their programs very, very closely over the course of the last several years. And so here's my just once and for all take on Ryan Silverfield, Alex Golesh, Eric Morris, and then also Kane Wommack, the current defensive coordinator at Alabama, former head coach at South Alabama, was also thrown in there. And so let's just get this thing started with Coach Ryan Silverfield. If the Razorbacks hire Ryan Silverfield, or if that's the guy who's hired now that we're just waiting for the name to be released, I think this would be a serious mistake on the Razorbacks' part. Not because Silverfield is a bad coach, but because he is a bad fit. And if they do end up hiring him, there's not going to be a lot of Memphis fans, if any, that are disappointed to see him go. Now, if you're not too tapped in with the Memphis program, you may go, well, how could that be? He wins nearly 10 games every year and has them in the hunt every year. Correct. But as I've said before on this channel, Ryan Silverfield is a guy who year in and year out has top 2 or 3, if not the number 1, roster talent relative to the rest of the conference. I mean, his roster of talent and depth is, if it's not number 1, it's top 3 as it pertains to the rest of the conference year in and year out. And he has 0 conference championships to show for it. In fact, he has 0 conference championship appearances to show for it. And the thing is with Ryan Silverfield that you got to understand, and I don't want this to sound like I'm just knocking the guy, but what I am knocking is his fit at the University of Arkansas. It's not personal. It's just me looking at the data at hand and going, this isn't going to translate well at the University of Arkansas. If you can't get to a conference championship when you've got the best talent in your entire conference, how in the heck are you going to compete at a program where you're going to have the middle, at best, the middle of the conference in terms of roster talent? The other thing about the Memphis program you have to understand is if you understand what he took over, it might give you more context as to why, or more understanding as to why I'm so convicted that he would not be a good fit at Arkansas. He didn't build Memphis program. He didn't pull it out of the ashes. The guy who did that was Justin Fuente. He's the one that pulled Memphis out of the darkness and made them a respectable winner. Then Mike Norvell took over and sort of took things to new levels, winning a conference championship, going to back-to-back conference championships. And so the thing that where Silverfield is with Memphis is he's safe. He's not going to ever, like Memphis will never fall back to the level that they were at when Fuente took over. But I also don't think they'll ever rise back to the level they were at when Norvell left. So what Silverfield is he kind of is just this floater that's in between what the program was when Fuente arrived and what the program was when Norvell left. He'll never reach that high or that low. He'll just always be right there in the middle, winning 8 to 10 games a year. And that's not bad coaching. He's a good coach. I just don't think he's a good fit at Arkansas. So what's my bottom line on Ryan Silverfield? He will not win as the Razorbacks head coach. And if he's the hire, I won't come off of that because all of a sudden, I want to rally around it as this Arkansas homer or anything like that. No, I don't believe that he will win at the University of Arkansas. And it's not because he's a bad coach. He's actually a really good coach. He's just not the right coach that can win at Arkansas. He would be a horrible fit, in my opinion. And I don't think that the success that he's managed to have at Memphis would translate to the University of Arkansas. Okay, the next coach we're going to talk about is Alex Golesh, who's currently at USF, the former coordinator at Tennessee. Here's the thing about Golesh. Okay, I think people are a little split on him. I think for the most part, the fan base would rally around him and be excited. He is a young up-and-coming coach. But here's what you need to understand about him. Going from year 1 to year 3 at USF, and if there's any USF fans that happen to be watching this, because I know I have a lot of you as subscribers on this channel, feel free to comment down below if you think I'm right or wrong on this. But he went from program savior in year 1 to underachiever right now in year 3. Here's the positives about Alex Golesh, is he's a roster builder. Like legitimately. Like, he will overhaul and turn over a roster, and it will become more talented almost immediately. Now, I don't know how much the way he turned over the roster at USF will translate to the U of A, because in a very short window of time, he took USF from having one of the least talented rosters in the AAC to one of the most talented rosters in the AAC. Now, it's a lot easier to do that in the AAC coaching at South Florida, coaching in the state of Florida, especially when your rival, UCF, goes to another conference. So he does have that going for him, which he would not have at the University of Arkansas. But the other thing that I love about Coach Golesh that I think is a strong positive that would translate and is much needed right now at the U of A is that he's a culture changer. Like, he's a culture changer and a culture builder. I talked about it a couple of weeks ago on a different video when I talked to Gary Bohannon, the Arkansas-bred quarterback who went to Baylor and then transferred to USF, who was on the roster, set to be the starting quarterback in Golesh's first season. However, Byron Brown ended up winning that job, and I don't know if Bohannon was injured or whatever, but talking to him at Media Day, Bohannon that is, and hearing him talk about Golesh and how he almost immediately not only turned over the roster but changed the culture instantly, that was pretty telling for me. And we certainly need somebody to come into the U of A and change that culture, change the mentality, change everything. And if you don't know, when Golesh took over USF, he basically took over for the Chad Morris of South Florida football. It was a former Clemson coordinator, Jeff Scott, who went 4-29 in the previous 4 years. And in year one, Golesh is in a bowl game, and there was a lot of momentum, a lot of positive momentum moving in the direction. The conference shifted. Some of their top tier teams that were in the AAC had left. So there was no longer a Cincinnati, no longer a Houston, no longer a UCF. And then after his first season, there was no longer an SMU. So the table seemed set for USF to slide right into one of those roles to replace either that Cincy, that UCF, that SMU being in that top tier in the conference. And then year two, he had some injuries at key positions and ended up, I think, going 7-6 again. But then this year was supposed to be the year. This was supposed to be the year that USF not only is competing to win a conference championship and winning a conference championship, but they are in the CFP hunt. And they were until they weren't. And I think right now, them sitting at 8-3, still have the potential to win 10 games, which would be a huge victory. But I think right now, a lot of the tone of the fan base right now, at least for a portion of it, is going, man, like, how did we get here? We're suddenly underachieving. And so I think my bottom line on Golesh as it pertains to the Razorback job is I think he can win games at Arkansas. I think if he was the head coach, or if he is the head coach that we're waiting to be announced, I think he will win games. I just don't know if he's a guy that will win enough consistently to satisfy the fan base. And I know it's so difficult when you're trying to compare context, because you look at someone like Mike Norvell, who was a certified killer, a certified winner at Memphis. I mean, he had him in the hunt. He had him in the New Year's Six. In fact, his last year, if it was the current format instead of what it was then, he would have had him in the playoff. And so you think, okay, he goes to Florida State. He is going to absolutely kill it with that level of resources, recruiting grounds, all that stuff. And then, I mean, he had that 1 year where they got screwed out of being in the CFP, in my opinion at least. However, outside of that, it's really been an abysmal tenure. And now, I mean, looks like he's going to be able to return for another year. But so I know it's difficult, but I think my concern with a hire like Golesh is building a roster to compete in the AAC, recruiting and living at a program that's in South Florida or that's in the state of Florida is much different than trying to build a program contender at the University of Arkansas in a conference like the SEC. So, let me know your thoughts so far. if you're a Razorback fan on either of these two guys, Silverfield or Golesh, I'm about to get to my next coach to talk about. If you're a USF fan or a Memphis fan, how would you feel about seeing your coach leave? Would you be disappointed? Would you be concerned? Or would you be going, yes, thank you. Now we can get someone in here that can get it done. Let me know down in the comments. All right, the next one we're going to talk about is UNT's Coach Eric Morris. I've talked about him a couple of times on this channel as well. I mean, you see, if you watch this team play this past weekend, they lit up the scoreboard. They're 10-1 now. They're in the driver's seat for controlling their own destiny for a CFP bid. It's really going to come down to a conference championship against Tulane, as long as there's no hiccups in the last game of the season. But here's the thing about Morris, okay? He is a winner. Look at his history. He wins everywhere he goes. He is also a talent finder and developer. And if you're a Razorback fan watching this video, you need to listen to this right now, because this is something about Morris that I haven't specifically dived into, whatever the word is. Sorry. I've talked about how his roster talent in the AAC is comparable to what his roster talent at Arkansas has the potential to be. But when I talk about him being a talent developer, right? We hear that when people talk about coaches being, he develops his players. And I think there's two ways that you can look at that. Because with Eric Morris, what's insane about him is his uncanny ability to develop the talent he gets, when really, if you look at his tenure at North Texas, he only has that talent for one season. Yet he develops them to the point where they end up getting bigger and better opportunities and leaving, and he has to start all over the next year. And so when I think about his ability to develop talent, it's not just from a perspective of, hey, a QB comes in, he's inaccurate, he can't read a defense, and after spending a couple years in the program with this coach, he's now an accurate passer who can read defenses. He's developed. I think there's another lens you have to look at it when it comes to Coach Morris, because what he's able to do is first off, identify the good attributes that a player has, or the good attribute a player has. And then he can help that player take that attribute from good to elite. And he does it very quickly. And this is how he has gotten that reputation of being able to do more with less. Because most of the teams you're competing with in the SEC, they have players that have more good attributes. Morris is used to coaching players that have less good attributes, but he's able to develop those attributes to elite. Now, how is he able to do that, and how does he do it so quickly? A perfect case study is his team right now at North Texas. Is that he has this uncanny ability to identify what the player's skill, best skill is. Like, what are they the best at? And you would think that would be a no-brainer for any coach, but there's a lot of coaches who coach at high levels, who coach at bigger programs than North Texas right now in the college football landscape, that they don't know what their players' talents are or what their best talents are. A lot of times these guys just bring in players with a lot of good attributes, hire coaches and say, scheme them up, go, if it's an offense, go score points. If it's a defense, keep them from scoring points. And if you don't, you're fired. Morris really has an uncanny ability for identifying what a player does well, and then his system comes into play because he's able to put players now in position where they're able to exclusively focus on doing the thing they do well. And that's where his system and player development go hand in hand. So if he has a quarterback that is lights out accuracy on passes that are 12 to 15 yards and can read a defense, guess what? He's going to put that quarterback in situations and in positions consistently in games through his scheme where he's making 12 to 15 yard passes, and he has options in how he reads the defense. If his player can't read the defense and he can throw a short ball and he's got wheels on him, okay, well, we're going to take all the guesswork out and we're going to put him in positions where he can make plays with his legs. And so he just has a very, to me, elite skill as a coach in being able to identify the attributes that his players do have, the good attributes, even though it might not be as many attributes as other places, and then put them in positions within his scheme and his system where they're literally only asked to do the thing that they're good at. And when you're literally only asked to do the thing that you're good at, not only are you getting more repetitions at that, not only are you developing that because you're getting game reps at using it, but your confidence is growing. And then next thing you know, you have a team like this UNT team who was a bunch of freshmen and sophomores playing with the confidence of fifth-year seniors. True freshman running back, redshirt freshman quarterback, sophomore receivers, all over the field. Now, I'm not saying they don't have any senior leadership because they do, but what I'm saying is most of his key players, his best players, are freshmen, redshirt freshmen, sophomores that he has plugged into the system, asked them to do what they're good at, and now their confidence is skyrocketed, and these, handful of things they were good at doing, they're now becoming elite at. So it may not be the best quarterback in the country. He may not be able to have all the tools that other quarterbacks at bigger programs have, but the tools that their quarterback does have, he's becoming elite with those. So my bottom line with Coach Morris is simple. I think the success that he had at Incarnate Word out in San Antonio, his first head coaching college job, and the success that he's currently seeing at UNT can translate to the University of Arkansas. But you know what? I guess we'll just have to see if that's the direction they go. It'd be hard for me to see him being named the coach in the next 48 hours when he's literally on the cusp of a playoff run. But his name is linked to it. It's been linked to it. Talked about it a couple weeks ago. Pete Thamel confirmed it over the weekend. So the fourth and final candidate is Kane Wommack. Okay, this one's a wild card for me. Not as familiar with him. I know he's a former player for the Hogs. It seems like his name has popped up with a Razorback coaching search in the past. Now, I don't think it was the head coaching search. I think it may have been when could have been when Pittman was looking for a DC to replace Barry Odom. I think that may have been when his name was popping up, if I remember correctly. Maybe not. Or maybe it was when Pittman first got hired and he was linked to the DC job before Pittman ended up hiring Barry Odom. Had a decent run as the head coach at South Alabama. I mean, nothing to do backflips and jumping jacks over, but also wasn't like it was a failure or anything like that. He had a 10-win season sandwiched in there between two mediocre seasons. I think my biggest concern with him is right now he's the DC at Bama. And, coaching defense at Bama is a lot different than coaching defense at Arkansas. And I don't have enough data or information on him. I mean, I might have to dig into his time at Indiana when he was the coordinator at Indiana, because I think that's a more comparable opportunity in terms of what he would be taking on with the Arkansas job, specifically as it pertains to reconstructing a defense that desperately needs it. But if you happen to have more insight on Kane Womack, go ahead and leave the comments down below. And right now, I want to get to the last part of this video, the last part of this episode, talking about the G6 playoff race. Could we see two G6 teams in the CFP? Most of the conversation I've been entertaining on this channel is the conversation of the AAC champion versus JMU, who's more deserving of the bid. Obviously talked about last week that a data point that would have to be acknowledged would be JMU's game against Washington State. I said it on here. I said that if they only win by a field goal or a few points, that has to be taken into consideration, considering that UNT beat the brakes off Washington State. And then, of course, as always, someone in the comments, not on YouTube, but over on our TikTok, was like, oh, so are you saying that because, oh, and by the way, they did beat Washington State by just a few points. In fact, their offense forgot to show up for the first half. And I don't want to sound like I'm bashing JMU because I'm a fan of JMU, want them to be successful, but just objectively speaking, I don't think they have the resume that contends with whoever it is that ends up winning the AAC, whether that being North Texas or Tulane. But someone said, oh, so does that mean that JMU is X amount of points better than Indiana, because they were comparing the margin of victory of JMU over Old Dominion versus Indiana over Old Dominion. And my thing is look, the whole transitive property argument that I know I'm using in comparing UNT versus Washington State and JMU versus Washington State, I'm not saying that's a one-size-fits-all, end-all, be-all argument. But when you have comparable programs in comparable situations and you don't have a lot of other data points that you can compare, I think it's something that's necessary to look at. Okay, Indiana is a totally different context. First off, they're playing a Big Ten schedule. They have a win over Oregon. So no, of course not. I'm not going to use the transitive property to make an argument that JMU is better than Indiana. But when you're talking about two G6 programs and both playing a common opponent in Washington State who represents the Pac-12, I think it's fair to look at the margin of victory or the difference in the two games as it pertains to who you would select to get that bid. But I just went on that whole tangent, but the whole point of this particular segment is to look at what would it take to get JMU and North Texas or JMU and Tulane in the CFP, which would completely drive so many people crazy, so many fans and talking heads. But I'm not saying this is likely, but it is possible. And I'm going to lay out exactly what needs to happen over there on the Atlantic Coast Conference, aka the Atlantic Coast Chaos, that needs to happen in order to get either UNT and Tulane, either UNT or Tulane in along with JMU. So the first thing that has to happen is JMU needs to win their conference championship. Second thing is UNT or Tulane have to win their last game, and then one of them obviously will win the conference championship. So that's we already know that. But as it pertains to the ACC this weekend, okay, and if you're an underdog fan and you would love to see the chaos ensue to get two G6s in, here's what you're cheering for. Here's who you're rooting for. You want Miami to beat Pitt. You want Virginia Tech to beat Virginia. You want Cal to beat SMU, which that's probably the least likely to happen out of all these. And then we need Duke to beat Wake Forest. And what that would do is that would put an ACC championship of Duke versus Miami or Duke versus Virginia. I'd have to look and see how the tiebreaker went between Miami and Virginia. But essentially, if it's a 6-way ACC tie with all these teams being 6-2 or whatever it is, Duke gets one of those bids, and then it's either going to be Miami that they place or Virginia that they play, Miami that they play or Virginia that they play. And then we need Duke to win the ACC championship, which would be an 8-5 ACC champion. And there is no way that a 5-loss ACC champion gets in over a 12-1 JMU conference champion. And I say JMU because I think the auto bid outside of this is going to go to the AAC. I've been very adamant about that, and nothing happened this weekend to make me think any differently. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you have any thoughts on the coaching search or the coaches that I talked about, if you have any thoughts about this ACC chaos, the Atlantic Coast chaos, do you want to see two teams get in? Do you not? Why or why not? Let me know your thoughts down below. And until next time, that's it for me, Trey Smith, College Underdogs.